In the quiet hours of an otherwise ordinary evening, Earth was about to witness an event that would change everything. The sky above shimmered faintly at first, like heat waves rising from asphalt on a summer day. People went about their lives. Students studied for exams. Parents tucked their children into bed, and workers wrapped up late shifts under fluorescent lights. No one noticed the subtle shift in the air, the strange hum vibrating through the atmosphere, but soon enough it became impossible to ignore. High above the planet, something extraordinary was happening. A crack appeared in the heavens, splitting open the fabric of reality itself. It wasn't just a cloud formation or some trick of light. This was real, tangible, and terrifying. Astronomers around the world scrambled to understand what they were seeing. Telescopes trained upward captured images of massive ships emerging from the rift, each one larger than any skyscraper ever built by human hands. These weren't spaceships designed for exploration. They were war machines. Sleek, angular, bristling with weapons, these vessels radiated power and menace. They belonged to the Vorthons, an alien race humanity had never encountered before but would now never forget. The Vorthons wasted no time making their intentions clear. Within minutes of their arrival, every communication device on Earth buzzed, with a single message broadcasted in perfect English: "Surrender your planet or face annihilation." The voice was cold, mechanical, devoid of emotion. It sent shivers down spines everywhere. Governments convened emergency meetings, military forces scrambled jets into the air, and civilians huddled together in fear. Social media exploded with videos of the alien fleet looming ominously overhead, accompanied by cries of panic and disbelief. Humanity had always wondered if aliens existed, and now, here they were, declaring war. Sarah Chen sat alone in her small apartment in New York City, staring out the window as chaos unfolded outside. She was a young astrophysicist working at NASA, someone who spent most days analyzing data and dreaming of distant galaxies. Tonight, however, she felt utterly powerless. The streets below were filled with people running in every direction, shouting incomprehensibly. Car horns blared, sirens wailed, and the glow of emergency vehicles painted the cityscape red and blue. Sarah clutched her phone tightly, scrolling through endless updates online. Every news outlet reported the same thing: Earth was under attack. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Standing there was Mark Reynolds, her colleague and best friend since grad school. His usually calm demeanor was replaced with wide eyes and disheveled hair. "We need to get to the lab," he said urgently. "If anyone can figure out how to fight back, it's us." Sarah hesitated for a moment, then grabbed her coat and followed him downstairs. Outside, the scene was even more chaotic than she'd imagined. People crowded the sidewalks, pointing frantically at the sky where the alien ships hovered like silent predators. Some cried openly, while others shouted prayers or curses. Despite the terror gripping everyone around them, Sarah couldn't help but notice flashes of defiance. A group of teenagers spray-painted slogans on walls: "Not today," and "Earth fights back." Even in the face of certain doom, humanity refused to give up without a struggle. Meanwhile, halfway across the globe in rural Pakistan, Ahmed Khan stood in his field, gazing up at the alien armada. He was a simple farmer, tending crops and raising livestock to support his family. Life had been hard but predictable, until tonight. The sight of those monstrous ships froze him in place. For a long moment, he simply stared, unable to process what he was seeing. Then anger bubbled up inside him. Who were these invaders to come uninvited and demand surrender? Did they really think humans would roll over so easily? Ahmed turned toward his village, where neighbors gathered in the square, murmuring anxiously. Many held torches or lanterns, casting flickering shadows against the mud-brick walls. Someone suggested fleeing into the mountains, but Ahmed shook his head firmly. "Running won't save us," he declared, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "If we stand together, we might have a chance." His words sparked something in the crowd. Slowly, men and women began nodding in agreement. They didn't have advanced technology or weapons, but they had grit and resourcefulness. By morning, The villagers had organized themselves into groups, assigning tasks based on skill and strength. Some dug trenches and set traps using whatever tools they had available. Others fashioned crude explosives from fertilizer and scrap metal. Ahmed took charge naturally, his calm authority inspiring confidence in those around him. Though none of them knew whether their efforts would make a difference, they resolved to try. Back in New York, Sarah and Mark reached the lab just as the first wave of attacks began. From their vantage point high above the city, they watched, in horror as beams of energy lanced down from the alien ships, obliterating buildings and sending plumes of smoke billowing into the night sky. The sound was deafening, a mix of explosions, screams, and collapsing structures. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face but forced herself to focus. "We have to do something," she whispered hoarsely. "Anything." Mark nodded grimly. "Let's start with the drones. If we can capture one intact, maybe we can reverse engineer their tech." He pulled up surveillance footage showing smaller alien craft patrolling the skies. Unlike the towering star destroyers, these drones moved swiftly and erratically, scanning the ground below with eerie precision. One of them swooped low near the lab, prompting both scientists to duck instinctively. When it passed, Sarah straightened up, her mind racing. "If we disable its propulsion system, we can bring it down," she said. "But we'll need help." Help came in unexpected forms. Over the next few hours, volunteers poured into the lab, engineers, hackers, even curious teenagers armed with laptops. Together, they brainstormed ways to disrupt the drone systems. Using makeshift equipment cobbled together from spare parts, they managed to create a jamming signal capable of interfering with its controls. When the drone returned later that night, Sarah activated the device, holding her breath as the machine sputtered midair and crashed onto a nearby rooftop. The team cheered, but their celebration was short-lived. Retrieving the wreckage proved dangerous, especially with the constant threat of further attacks. Still, they succeeded, dragging the mangled remains back to the lab for analysis. As dawn broke over the horizon, Sarah and Mark pored over the alien technology, their exhaustion overridden by adrenaline. Each discovery brought new questions and new possibilities. Could they adapt the drone's shielding capabilities to protect human fighters? What about its propulsion system? Every breakthrough fueled their determination to keep going. While Sarah and her team worked tirelessly in the lab, ordinary citizens across the globe found their own ways to resist. In Tokyo, office workers barricaded subway tunnels to block advancing alien patrols. In Rio de Janeiro, street artists used graffiti to mark safe zones and rally survivors. And in Moscow, retired soldiers trained civilians in guerrilla tactics, teaching them how to use whatever weapons they could find. Everywhere you looked, humanity was fighting back, not with superior firepower, but with sheer willpower. Yet not all acts of resistance were violent. In Paris, a group of musicians gathered in front of the Eiffel Tower, playing defiant songs as flames engulfed the surrounding area. Their music carried far beyond the city limits, broadcasting a message of hope amid despair. Similarly, in Cape B. Town, storytellers shared tales of past struggles and victories, reminding listeners that humanity had faced extinction-level threats before and survived. As the hours ticked by, humanity's response grew more coordinated. Refugees streamed into underground bunkers, hospitals converted warehouses into makeshift clinics, and amateur radio operators connected isolated communities. Even children contributed, using social media to spread vital information faster than traditional channels could manage. Slowly but surely, a global network of resistance took shape, united by a shared purpose: survival. By the end of the first day, the Vorthans likely expected Earth to crumble beneath their assault. Instead, they found themselves facing a species unlike any they had encountered before. Humans were flawed, fragile, and vastly outnumbered, but they were also resilient, creative, and fiercely protective of their home. The invaders had made a grave mistake. They had angered humans, and now they would learn exactly what that meant. As the second day of the alien invasion dawned, Earth was a planet transformed. The once familiar skyline of cities now bore the scars of destruction. smoldering craters where buildings used to stand, streets littered with debris, and skies streaked with smoke. Yet amidst the chaos, humanity's spirit burned brighter than ever. People had begun adapting to this new reality, finding ways to resist despite overwhelming odds. It wasn't just soldiers or scientists leading the charge. Ordinary individuals stepped up in extraordinary ways, proving that courage could be found even in the most unlikely places. Sarah Chen and Mark Reynolds worked tirelessly in their makeshift lab, surrounded by scraps of alien technology salvaged from the downed drone. The air buzzed with urgency as they pieced together fragments of knowledge about the Vorthons' advanced weaponry and defenses. Their goal was simple, yet monumental: reverse engineer enough of the alien tech to give humanity a fighting chance. Sarah focused on deciphering the drone's energy shield system, while Mark tackled its propulsion mechanism. Both knew time was running out. The Vorthons showed no signs of slowing their assault. "We're dealing with something way beyond us," Sarah muttered, frustration evident in her voice as she studied a glowing circuit board. "Their tech is so advanced, it's like trying to understand quantum physics after learning basic arithmetic." Mark leaned over her shoulder, his brow furrowed. "But we don't need to master it completely. We just need to find one weak spot. One thing we can exploit." He pointed at a cluster of wires connected to what looked like a power core. "What if we overload this? If we can disrupt their shields, our weapons might actually do some damage." Sarah nodded slowly, her mind racing. "It's risky, but it's worth a shot. Let's see if we can replicate it on a larger scale." She grabbed a notebook and began jotting down calculations, her hands trembling slightly from exhaustion. Neither of them had slept in nearly 48 hours, but adrenaline kept them going. Every breakthrough felt like a lifeline for humanity. Outside the lab, New York City resembled a war zone. Alien drones patrolled the skies relentlessly, scanning for any signs of resistance. Despite the danger, small groups of civilians banded together to fight back using whatever tools they could scavenge. In one neighborhood, a retired mechanic named Tony rigged an old truck with explosives and drove it straight into a patrol of alien ground troops. The explosion shook nearby buildings, sending shards of metal raining down, but it also cleared a path for survivors to escape. Tony didn't survive the blast, but his sacrifice inspired others to take similar risks. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Ahmed Khan continued rallying his village against the invaders. His leadership had turned the small farming community into a hub of resistance. Villagers fortified their homes with sandbags and sharpened sticks, turning everyday objects into weapons. When a group of alien scouts descended upon the area, Ahmed led a daring ambush. Using homemade bombs hidden along the dirt roads, they managed to disable 2 scout ships before retreating into the dense forest surrounding the village. Though the victory was minor compared to the scale of the invasion, it proved that even the smallest acts of defiance could have an impact. Back in the lab, Sarah and Mark finally achieved a breakthrough. After countless failed attempts, they successfully replicated part of the alien shielding technology on a human fighter jet. The modified plane crackled with blue energy as it hovered above the test field, deflecting simulated attacks with ease. Cheers erupted among the team members who had worked non-stop to make this possible. For the first time since the invasion began, there was a glimmer of hope. "This changes everything," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. "If we can outfit more jets with these shields, we might actually stand a chance in aerial combat." Mark grinned, though fatigue shadowed his face. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. This is just the beginning. But you're right. We've got something now. Something real." News of the breakthrough spread quickly through underground networks, reaching resistance fighters around the globe. Engineers in Europe began retrofitting military aircraft with the new shielding technology, while hackers in Asia worked to jam the aliens' communication systems. Civilians donated materials, shared resources, and risked their lives to transport supplies to those in need. Humanity was uniting in ways no one thought possible, driven by desperation and determination. In Tokyo, a young programmer named Aiko devised a plan to hack into the Vorthon drone's control systems. Working from a basement shelter, She spent hours analyzing intercepted signals until she identified a vulnerability in their programming. With help from fellow coders online, she created a virus capable of temporarily disabling entire squadrons of drones. The first test run targeted a fleet hovering over central Tokyo. Within seconds, dozens of drones plummeted from the sky, crashing harmlessly into abandoned buildings below. Cheers erupted across the city as residents realized they had struck a blow against the invaders. Not all victories came without cost. In Rio de Janeiro, a group of teenagers armed with Molotov cocktails launched a nighttime raid on an alien supply depot. They succeeded in destroying several crates of equipment but were ambushed during their retreat. Only 3 of the 10 made it back alive. Still, their bravery inspired others to take action, spreading the message that even kids could contribute to the fight. As the second day drew to a close, humanity's resilience became undeniable. From the ashes of destruction rose stories of heroism and ingenuity. In Paris, musicians played defiant symphonies outside the Louvre, refusing to let fear silence art. In Johannesburg, teachers organized classes in bomb shelters, ensuring children continued learning despite the turmoil. And in Moscow, elderly, veterans trained young recruits in guerrilla warfare, passing down lessons learned during past conflicts. Even nature seemed to join the resistance. In Canada, wolves attacked alien patrols wandering too close to their dens, dragging soldiers into the wilderness before disappearing into the trees. Birds swarmed drones, pecking at sensors until they malfunctioned and crashed. Animals may not have understood the concept of war, but they recognized a threat when they saw one, and responded accordingly. Despite these scattered successes, the overall situation remained dire. The Vorthan star destroyers loomed ominously in orbit, launching devastating strikes on major cities and military installations. Entire nations teetered on the brink of collapse, their infrastructure shattered beyond repair. Millions had already perished and millions more faced starvation, disease, and displacement. Yet even in the darkest moments, humanity refused to surrender. Late that night, Sarah stood on the rooftop of the lab, gazing up at the alien fleet. Her eyes reflected both anger and resolve. "They think we're weak," she whispered to herself. "They think we'll break under pressure, but they don't know us, not really." Behind her, Mark joined silently, handing her a cup of coffee. "We'll show them," he said simply. "One step at a time." The words echoed in Sarah's mind as she turned back toward the lab. Inside, teams of scientists and engineers worked around the clock, fueled by caffeine and sheer willpower. Outside, ordinary people continued resisting in ways big and small. Together they formed an unstoppable force, a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity. By the end of the second day, one truth became clear. The Vorthons had underestimated their opponents. Humans weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their home, their families, their future. And as long as there was breath in their lungs, they would never stop fighting. By the third day of the alien invasion, humanity had reached a critical turning point. The initial shock and chaos were giving way to something far more powerful: unity. For centuries, Earth's nations had been divided by borders, ideologies, and conflicts. But now, faced with extinction, they set aside their differences and came together as one species united against a common enemy. It was a transformation born out of necessity, but also out of hope. A shared belief that even in the darkest hour, humans could rise above. The United Nations convened an emergency summit unlike any before it. Leaders from every corner of the globe gathered, some virtually, others in person, to coordinate a global counterattack. Gone were the usual political squabbles and diplomatic formalities. This meeting was about survival. Representatives spoke candidly, sharing intelligence, resources, and strategies. Military commanders outlined plans for coordinated strikes, while scientists presented breakthroughs like the modified shielding technology developed by Sarah Chen and Mark Reynolds. The message was clear. Humanity would fight back, not as individual nations, but as a single entity. In New York City, Sarah and her team worked around the clock to expand on their earlier success. Their makeshift lab had become ground zero for innovation, attracting experts from all fields who contributed whatever skills they possessed. Engineers retrofitted fighter jets with the new shielding systems, while programmers wrote code to integrate, targeting algorithms into existing weapons platforms. Every moment counted, and everyone understood the stakes. It's not just about winning battles, Sarah told the group during a rare break. It's about showing them we won't give up. We're not just defending our planet, we're proving what it means to be human. Her words resonated deeply with those around her. Many had lost loved ones in the attacks, yet they channeled their grief into action. Among them was Maria Lopez, a former airline pilot who volunteered to test fly one of the upgraded jets. Though she hadn't flown combat missions before, Maria's determination made her an ideal candidate. "If I can help turn the tide, then my family didn't die for nothing," she said firmly when asked why she volunteered. Her bravery inspired others to step forward, whether as pilots, engineers, or medics. Meanwhile, in rural Pakistan, Ahmed Khan led his village in preparing for another clash with the invaders. Word of their ambush had spread through underground networks, earning them recognition as one of the most effective resistance groups outside urban areas. Supplies began arriving, weapons smuggled in crates marked as farming equipment, medical, kits hidden inside food parcels. Ahmed used these resources wisely, training villagers in guerrilla tactics and setting traps designed to lure alien patrols into ambush zones. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ahmed stood atop a hill overlooking his village. Behind him, torches flickered in the wind, casting long shadows across the dry earth. He thought about how much had changed in just 3 days. Before the invasion, he'd seen himself as nothing more than a farmer, tending crops and raising livestock to support his family. Now he was a leader, a symbol of defiance. His wife, Fatima, approached quietly, handing him a cup of tea. "You've done so much already," she said softly. "But you carry such a heavy burden." Ahmed sighed, staring at the distant glow of alien ships hovering in the sky. "We all do. This isn't just about us anymore, it's about everyone. If we falter, others will lose hope." Fatima placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then don't falter. Lead with your heart, and people will follow." Her words strengthened his resolve. The next morning, Ahmed rallied his fighters, explaining the plan for their next operation. They would strike at dawn, targeting a convoy transporting supplies to a larger Vorthon base nearby. Success depended on timing and precision, but if executed correctly, it could cripple the invaders' efforts in the region. Back in New York, preparations for the global counterattack reached a fever pitch. Fighter jets equipped with the new shielding technology lined runways across multiple continents, ready to launch simultaneously. Underground bunkers served as command centers, coordinating movements via encrypted channels to avoid detection. Civilians played crucial roles too, providing logistical support, relaying information, and caring for the wounded. Even children contributed using social media to track alien movements and alert nearby resistance groups. As midnight approached, tension filled the air. Pilots suited up, mechanics performed final checks on aircraft, and soldiers double-checked their gear. In Tokyo, Aiko monitored her network of hacked drones, ensuring they remained offline until the attack commenced. In Johannesburg, teachers turned classrooms into strategy hubs, teaching students how to identify weak points in alien defenses based on intercepted data. Humanity wasn't just fighting blindly, it was adapting, learning, evolving. When the signal finally came, thousands of repurposed aircraft took to the skies in unison. The sight was breathtaking, streaks of light cutting through the darkness, as humanity launched its first major offensive against the Vorthons. From Europe to Asia, Africa to South America, the coordinated assault caught the invaders off guard. Alien drones scrambled to respond, but many were disabled thanks to Aiko's virus. Ground forces clashed with Vorthon patrols, pushing them back with surprising ferocity. Sarah watched the battle unfold from a monitor in the lab, her heart pounding with each update. Jets outfitted with the new shielding technology proved nearly impervious to enemy fire, allowing pilots to close in on larger targets. Explosions lit up the night sky as human fighters struck key installations, disrupting supply lines and communications networks. Though losses were inevitable, morale soared. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had struck a meaningful blow. Ahmed's team executed their ambush flawlessly. As the convoy passed through a narrow canyon, hidden explosives detonated, sending vehicles careening off. The code fighters emerged from the shadows, firing salvaged weapons and hurling Molotov cocktails. Chaos erupted as the Vorthons attempted to regroup, but Ahmed's forces hit hard and fast, retreating before reinforcements could arrive. By sunrise, the convoy lay in ruins, its cargo destroyed. News of the victory spread quickly, reigniting hope among survivors. People cheered in the streets, sang songs of defiance, and vowed to keep resisting. Social media buzzed with messages of encouragement. We are stronger together. They picked the wrong planet to invade. This is what happens when you anger humans. Yet amidst the celebration, there was no room for complacency. The Vorthons still held the upper hand, their star destroyers dominating Earth's orbit. Casualties mounted, cities crumbled, and resources dwindled. But humanity had proven something vital. It could adapt, innovate, and fight back. Each small victory added up, chipping away at the invaders' confidence. Late that night, Sarah sat alone in the lab, exhausted but unable to sleep. She replayed footage of the counterattack over and over, analyzing every detail. What worked? What didn't? How could they improve next time? Beside her, Mark dozed fitfully, his head resting on a pile of papers. Despite the progress they'd made, Sarah knew the war was far from over. They'll come harder next time, she murmured to herself, and we'll have to be ready. Outside, the sky shimmered faintly where the rift remained open. Beyond it, the vastness of space stretched endlessly, a reminder of how small and fragile Earth truly was. Yet within that fragility lay strength. Humanity had faced impossible odds before and emerged victorious. This time would be no different, as dawn broke over the horizon, painting the world in hues of gold and crimson. Sarah stepped onto the rooftop once more. Below her, the city stirred to life, battered but unbowed. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughed, a sound both ordinary and extraordinary. It reminded her of why they fought, not just for survival, but for the future. This is only the beginning, she whispered, her voice steady despite the weight of everything ahead. We'll keep fighting. Together. And so humanity pressed onward, united by a shared purpose and an unbreakable spirit. The battle was far from won, but the seeds of triumph had been sown. By the fourth day of the alien invasion, the war had taken its toll on humanity in ways both visible and invisible. The physical scars were everywhere, smoldering ruins where cities once stood, forests reduced to ash, rivers tainted with debris. But beneath the surface lay deeper wounds, the grief of losing loved ones, the exhaustion of constant fear, and the relentless pressure of fighting an enemy that seemed almost invincible. Yet even as despair threatened to creep in, humanity clung to hope, drawing strength from the bonds forged in the crucible of conflict. Sarah Chen sat slumped in a chair inside the lab, her hands trembling slightly as she stared at a list of casualties. Each name represented someone who had sacrificed everything for the cause. Pilots who flew missions knowing they might not return, engineers who worked themselves to collapse, civilians who shielded others with their own bodies. Among them was Maria Lopez, the brave pilot who had tested the first retrofitted jet. Her plane had been shot down during the global counterattack, but not before she delivered a crippling blow to a Vorthon supply depot. Sarah felt a lump rise in her throat as she read Maria's final transmission. Tell my kids I love them. Mark noticed her distress and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. We can't save everyone, he said gently, but we're saving billions by doing this. Don't lose sight of that. Sarah nodded, wiping away tears. I know, it's just so hard sometimes. It wasn't just the scientists bearing the emotional burden. Across the globe, people grappled with loss while continuing to resist. In rural Pakistan, Ahmed Khan carried the weight of leadership heavily on his shoulders. His village had repelled another alien attack the previous night, but the cost had been high. Several fighters had perished, including a young boy named Rafiq, who had insisted on joining despite being only 12 years old. Ahmed remembered the boy's wide-eyed determination as he volunteered, clutching a homemade spear. Now all that remained was a charred patch of earth where Rafiq had made his last stand. That evening, Ahmed gathered the villagers around a crackling fire. Fatima sat beside him holding their youngest child close. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Ahmed cleared his throat and began to address the group. "We've lost good people," he said, his voice steady, though his eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Rafiq, Zara, Hassan, they gave everything for us. Their bravery will never be forgotten. But we must honor their memory by keeping the fight alive. We cannot let their sacrifices be in vain." The crowd murmured in agreement, some nodding solemnly, others bowing their heads in prayer. Ahmed continued, his tone growing firmer. "Tomorrow we strike again, not because we want revenge, but because we want freedom. Freedom for our children, for our grandchildren, for everyone who comes after us." His words reignited a spark of defiance among the villagers. Though weary and grieving, they prepared for another mission, driven by the belief that their efforts mattered. Humanity's spirit was resilient, bending under pressure but refusing to break. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, Aiko faced her own struggles. The strain of maintaining control over hacked drones was taking a toll on her health. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her hands shook as she typed furiously at her keyboard. Despite her exhaustion, she refused to rest, knowing that any lapse could cost lives. Her team urged her to take breaks, but she waved them off. "This isn't just about me," she said sharply when one colleague pressed too hard. "If I stop, those drones come back online. And then what happens? More attacks, more deaths? No, I keep going." Her dedication inspired those around her. Volunteers brought her food and coffee, took shifts monitoring less critical systems, and ensured she stayed hydrated. Even in the darkest moments, humanity found ways to support each other, proving that compassion could thrive even in the midst of chaos. As the days wore on, stories of heroism spread far and wide, fueling resistance movements across the planet. In Rio de Janeiro, teenagers painted murals depicting fallen fighters alongside slogans like "Never Surrender" and "Earth Fights Back." In Paris, musicians held impromptu concerts in bombed-out squares, their melodies carrying messages of resilience and unity. And in Moscow, elderly veterans trained new recruits with unwavering patience, passing down lessons learned from past wars. Yet the psychological toll of prolonged conflict weighed heavily on everyone. Soldiers battled nightmares of alien horrors, civilians struggled with survivor's guilt, and leaders wrestled with the moral complexities of sacrifice. In New York, Sarah confided in Mark about her growing doubts. "What if we're wrong?" she asked late one night, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if we're leading people to their deaths for nothing?" Mark sighed, leaning back in his chair. "There are no guarantees in war, Sarah. All we can do is make choices based on what we believe is right. If we give up now, then yes, we've failed. But if we keep fighting, there's still a chance." His words resonated deeply with her. The next morning, she threw herself back into work with renewed vigor, determined to find new ways to level the playing field against the invaders. One breakthrough came unexpectedly. While analyzing data from captured alien tech, Sarah discovered a pattern in the energy signatures emitted by the Star Destroyers. The signals pulsed rhythmically, almost like heartbeats. At first, she thought it might be a form of communication, but further investigation revealed something even more significant. The pulses corresponded to vulnerabilities in the ship's shielding systems. "This could be it," she exclaimed, rushing to show Mark. "If we time our attacks to coincide with these pulses, we might be able to breach their shields." The revelation sparked a flurry of activity. Engineers recalibrated weapons to synchronize with the energy patterns, while pilots practiced timing their strikes with precision. Every detail mattered. A fraction of a second too early or too late could mean failure. But the potential payoff was enormous, a chance to strike directly at the heart of the Vorthon fleet. Word of the discovery reached resistance groups worldwide, igniting fresh waves of determination. In Johannesburg, teachers incorporated the findings into their lessons, teaching students how to identify optimal attack windows. In Europe, underground networks distributed manuals explaining the strategy to remote fighters. Even in the most isolated corners of the planet, humanity rallied around the new plan, united by a shared goal. As preparations neared completion, tensions ran high. Pilots suited up, mechanics performed final checks, and soldiers reviewed battle plans one last time. Civilians prayed, held vigils, and sent messages of encouragement to those heading into combat. Everyone understood the stakes. This would be the largest coordinated assault yet, a desperate bid to turn the tide of the war. When the signal came, thousands of aircraft launched simultaneously, soaring toward the alien fleet in perfect synchronization. Below, ground forces engaged Vorthon patrols, drawing their attention away from the skies. Above, the Star Destroyers loomed ominously, their massive forms blotting out the stars. As human fighters closed in, they waited for the telltale pulse in the energy signatures. When it came, they struck with everything they had. Explosions rocked the heavens as shields flickered and failed, exposing the vulnerable hulls of the alien ships. Fighter jets swarmed like bees, unleashing torrents of fire upon their targets. Ground-based missile launchers joined the fray, sending salvos arcing upward to meet the descending invaders. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity held the upper hand. In rural Pakistan, Ahmed led his team in a simultaneous assault on a nearby Vorthon outpost. Using the distraction caused by the aerial bombardment, they infiltrated the base and sabotaged key systems. By the time reinforcements arrived, the facility was engulfed in flames, its resources destroyed. Back in New York, Sarah watched the battle unfold on monitors, her heart racing with every update. Jets screamed through the sky, dodging enemy fire, while delivering devastating blows. Alien ships crumbled under the onslaught, plunging earthward in fiery streaks. Cheers erupted in the lab as reports poured in, multiple Star Destroyers disabled, supply lines severed, communications disrupted. Yet, amid the celebration, there was no room for complacency. The Vortons were far from defeated, and their retaliation would undoubtedly be fierce. But for now, humanity savored the victory, however fleeting it might be. People danced in the streets, sang songs of triumph, and embraced strangers in shared joy. For the first time in days, laughter echoed through the ruins. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the world in soft hues of pink and gold, Sarah stepped onto the rooftop once more. Beside her, Mark joined silently, handing her a cup of coffee. Together they gazed at the sky, where remnants of the alien fleet still lingered. "We did it," Sarah said softly, her voice tinged with awe. "Against all odds, we actually did." Mark smiled faintly. "For today at least. Tomorrow we'll have to do it all over again." She nodded, resolve hardening in her chest. The road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but humanity had proven something vital. It could adapt, endure, and fight back. Each victory, no matter how small, brought them closer to reclaiming their planet. Below, the city stirred to life, battered but unbowed. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughed, a sound both ordinary and extraordinary. It reminded Sarah of why they fought, not just for survival, but for the future. This is on. On the 5th day of humanity's war against the Vorthans, the stakes reached their peak. The previous night's assault had dealt a crippling blow to the alien fleet, but it was clear that the invaders were far from defeated. Their remaining Star Destroyers loomed menacingly in orbit, their weapons still capable of raining destruction upon Earth. Yet for the first time since the invasion began, humanity dared to dream of victory, not just survival, but triumph. The question was, how could they deliver the final blow? Sarah Chen and Mark Reynolds stood in the lab, poring over data from the recent battle. The breakthrough they'd discovered, timing attacks to exploit vulnerabilities in the Vorthon shields, had proven devastatingly effective. Multiple Star Destroyers had been disabled, their once impenetrable defenses shattered. But one ship remained untouched, the command vessel, hidden behind layers of reinforced energy shields. It was the nerve center of the entire fleet, controlling every move the Vorthons made. If humanity could destroy it, the invaders would lose coordination and likely retreat. "We need to hit their core," Sarah said, pointing at a schematic on the monitor. "That's where the main power source is located. Take that out, and the whole thing collapses." Mark frowned, studying the diagram. "Getting close enough won't be easy. Those shields are stronger than anything we've seen so far. Even with our modified jets, there's no guarantee we can break through." Sarah nodded grimly. "Then we'll have to go inside." The idea was audacious, borderline suicidal, but it might work. They needed volunteers willing to infiltrate the command ship, disable its shields from within, and plant explosives near the core. Once the shields were down, the rest of humanity's forces could finish the job. There was no room for error. Failure meant annihilation. News of the plan spread quickly through underground networks, reaching resistance fighters across the globe. Volunteers stepped forward without hesitation, knowing full well the risks involved. Among them was Ahmed Khan, who traveled from Pakistan to join the mission. When asked why he wanted to participate, he simply replied, "I'm just a farmer, but if my death means freedom for billions, so be it." His words resonated deeply, inspiring others to follow suit. Back in New York, Sarah briefed the team of volunteers chosen for the infiltration squad. Each member brought unique skills: pilots to navigate enemy territory, engineers to disable systems, medics to tend to injuries, and soldiers to provide cover. As she looked around the room, Sarah felt a mix of pride and sorrow. These were brave individuals willing to sacrifice everything for the greater good. "This isn't just about us," she told them, her voice steady despite the weight of emotion. "It's about everyone back home, the ones counting on us to win this fight. We may not all make it back, but what we do here will change the course of history. Let's make sure it counts." The mission launched under the cover of darkness. Retrofitted jets carrying the infiltration squad streaked toward the command ship, dodging enemy fire as they approached. The Vorthons scrambled to respond, launching swarms of drones to intercept the attackers. Explosions lit up the sky as human pilots fought fiercely to protect the squad's entry point. One by one, the jets broke formation, diving toward the massive vessel looming ahead. Inside the command ship, chaos reigned. The Vorthons, caught off guard by the sudden assault, struggled to mount an effective defense. The infiltration squad moved swiftly, splitting into smaller teams to carry out their objectives. Engineers worked tirelessly to disable sections of the shield generator, while soldiers engaged alien troops in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Every step forward came at a cost, but the squad pressed on, driven by sheer determination. Ahmed led his group deep into the heart of the ship, navigating labyrinthine corridors filled with hostile forces. He wielded a salvaged alien weapon with surprising skill, taking down enemies with precision and speed. Beside him, a young medic named Elena patched up wounded teammates even as bullets whizzed past her head. Despite the danger, neither faltered. They knew their mission was critical. Meanwhile, Sarah coordinated the operation remotely, guiding the squad through live feeds and sensor readings. Her voice crackled over comms, urging them onward. "You're almost there. Keep pushing." Finally, the squad reached the core chamber, a cavernous room dominated by a pulsating sphere of energy. The hum of raw power reverberated through the air, making it hard to think clearly. Engineers set to work planting explosives, their hands trembling with adrenaline. Time was running out. Vorthon reinforcements were closing in fast. Just as the last explosive was placed, disaster struck. An alien patrol ambushed the squad, pinning them down with relentless gunfire. Ahmed shouted orders, rallying his team to hold the line. "Cover them!" he yelled, gesturing toward the engineers finishing their task. "We don't leave until the job is done." Bullets tore through the air as the squad fought valiantly, buying precious seconds for the engineers. Then, with a deafening roar, the charges detonated. The core erupted in a blinding flash of light, sending shockwaves rippling through the ship. The energy shields flickered and collapsed, leaving the command vessel vulnerable. Outside, humanity's forces seized the opportunity. Fighter jets swooped in, unleashing torrents of fire upon the exposed hull. Ground-based missile launchers joined the barrage, targeting critical systems. Within minutes, the command ship began to disintegrate, its massive form breaking apart, in a spectacular display of destruction. As the flagship crumbled, the remaining Vorthon fleet wavered. Without centralized control, their movements became erratic, their attacks disjointed. One by one, the Star Destroyers retreated, fleeing back through the rift they had created. The skies above Earth cleared, revealing stars twinkling faintly in the aftermath of battle. In the quiet moments that followed, humanity paused to take stock of what had been achieved. Cities lay in ruins, scars etched into the land and hearts alike. Yet amidst the devastation, there was pride. Humans had proven themselves capable of standing toe-to-toe with gods and emerging triumphant. Sarah watched the horizon from the rooftop of the lab, tears streaming down her face. She whispered softly, "They'll remember us now, and they'll think twice before angering humans again." Below, people emerged from shelters, embracing loved ones and strangers alike. In rural Pakistan, Ahmed returned to his village as a hero, though he humbly insisted he was nothing special, just a man doing his duty. Across the globe, stories of bravery and sacrifice were shared, reminding everyone of the strength found in unity. The war had changed humanity forever. It had shown that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. That innovation wasn't limited to labs but could arise from necessity. And that hope, no matter how fragile, could sustain even the darkest hours. Dawn broke over a battered yet resilient Earth. Sarah turned to Mark with a weary smile. "We did it," she said. "Not because we were stronger or smarter, but because we refused to give up." He nodded, placing a hand on her shoulder. "And we'll rebuild. Together." Thus ended the saga of Earth's darkest hour and its brightest triumph. The Vorthons had come seeking conquest, only to find themselves humbled by a species that refused to break. For though humanity may have been small compared to the vastness of the universe, its spirit burned brighter than any star